Welcome, ladies, to the Real Estate Investor Show, providing inspiration, strategies, and insight to empower women investors to live balanced and financially free lives. Now, here are your co-hosts, Liz and Andressa.
Welcome back, ladies. On today's episode, we are so excited to share with you that we interviewed Anita Corsini. She is the host and star of HGTV's Flip or Flop Atlanta. We covered so many bases with her. I think what was most powerful that we chatted with her about was working with your spouse. So not just working with your spouse, but investing with your spouse. She's on TV with her spouse. So she had a lot to share on core things that we need to be doing to get the most out of investing, working, and connecting with our spouse.
Another important thing that we talked about is the identity. Who we are is not what we do in life. And we usually try to, we do backwards. Oh, I am a real estate investor and I do X, Y, and Z. And I'm not going to give you away everything that she talked about, but it truly is essential for you to be successful in life and to do what you are meant to do. If you really understand what is your true identity. So check this episode. You're not going to waste your time.
Welcome to the Real Estate Investor Show, ladies. My name is Liz.
And I am Andressa.
And we have Anita Corsini. We are so excited to have her on our show this week. We've been working hard to get her on our show for a while. So thank you, Anita, for being with us. And we're excited to jump into your story here. Thank you for being here.
It's great. I'm happy to be here. I'm in Florida at our rental property, taking care. We could have a whole conversation on rental properties. If you I could write a book. Really, I could write a book. But anyhow, we're here because, the rental market is closed and we can be here and spend some time here. And so it's great. So yes, I'm sitting with my computer on a laundry basket with random shelf behind me.
And we were just saying before we pressed record that it's all about adapting as women, as investors, as moms, and everything in between. So that's what this show is all about. We're serving you amazing ladies that are listening. We're all about helping you create a financially free and balanced life. And that's what our purpose is. That is what our mission is. And we just bring on some amazing women like Anita to share her story and hopefully give you some tips and tricks. So before we get into her story and, go down that path, Andressa, what is coming up for you? We always like to share something that is helpful for the amazing women listening.
Yeah. So I listen to Mel Robbins, I think on a daily basis.
Yes, you love her. You definitely
love her. She's just very straightforward. And another day she was talking about being busy, right? During this time, we're very, very busy. And then she turned the thing around. She's like, sometimes that's a trap that we put ourselves into. And I was like, what do you mean by that? So what she's saying is that there's a big difference between being busy or putting ourselves in certain situations so our brain is engaged doing something, not necessarily focusing on what we need to do or prioritize, but we just need to, clean the countertop or reorganize something that it really does not need to be done at that specific moment. So what she's saying is that it's just bringing awareness to our lives in terms, especially right now, in terms, okay, what is your priority? So if you're feeling overwhelmed because you're busy, it's because you're not really prioritizing what needs to be done. And your self-care, your mental health, it should be on that list. It should be on that list and not the laundry and everything else that is there. So it's just like a quick trap. So the first step, she's always big on the first step, right? So the first step is really the awareness. Stop and analyze your day. We all know that our days look very different and very similar, right? I don't know if it's Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. It doesn't matter. But, really be cautious about where you're spending your time and why you're spending that time, because you might be on that trap or of being busy, but not necessarily you need to. So it's a choice. So I thought it was very cool.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, love that too. It's really an important reminder for all of us on a daily basis.
Right.
So,
Right. It's
with
that productivity trap. We always want to feel productive, and sometimes folding the laundry, it makes us feel productive, and it is productive on one hand, but not necessarily, it might not be where we need to be focusing our time at that moment. And
yeah,
that's tricky. I mean, that's tricky because we
It
are,
is.
as women, we are divided as it comes, and our attention is grabbed from everywhere. I was I was on a phone call before this with a friend of mine who I'm listing her house, and my kid, I was like, I have to call you back because all three of them were like waiting for a Band-Aid, a snack,
yeah, snacks like good galore. I had a conversation with Angessa, and it was an important one. Not that none of all of our conversations are not important, but
Sure.
we were having a conversation, and I really just wanted to really hear her and really be present. And I just escaped to the garage. I hear, "Mommy, mommy," and I'm like, I'm hiding. So just for a minute.
Exactly. I mean, and I think that, we have to give ourselves a lot of grace that it's okay to go hide in the garage.
Yeah.
I mean, I looked at Ken, I said, can you please just entertain them for 1 hour? And I was like, or pass out the Band-Aids. Just pass out the Band-Aids for an hour.
That'll keep them busy, right? Band-Aids are so intriguing.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
So, he's got them. So hopefully, he said, well, do you want the dog with you? I was like, no, I don't want anybody with me right now.
I know that's demanding too. So as we jump into your amazing story, Anita, how did you get involved in real estate investing, and how, where did it all begin for you?
So, I am a teacher by trade. I have a math degree from UGA, and I was a really I'm truly was born to be an educator. Like, that is just so much ingrained in who I am, because I love to learn and I love to share what I've learned. So that's where I started. And I was at a small school and really, really grew that curriculum. And I went and got my master's degree, and then was expecting my first child and was planning to stay home. And Ken, for the year prior, he had kind of started on his branch off into his real estate journey, which is really his passion, quite honestly. Like, that's where he just he's born for that, truly born for that. I've never met anyone more born for real estate than him. And so when I was pregnant, I had just finished exams. This was probably in like June of 2007. He says, you need to go get your real estate license before the baby comes. And honestly, he just said it like we were in the kitchen and threw that quarter out there. Like, just
yes, get nothing else to do.
I know, I hadn't even considered it. I was very supportive. I was so proud of what he was doing, 100% on board, but I didn't really consider the role I could play in it. And of course, he had figured all that out. And I was kind of like, what? I'm not, I was ready to kind of hit career pause and just, I was excited about having my first baby. And he said, no, go get it now, because you won't go get it after the baby comes. It'll be much trickier, to get out and do that. And he said, you're teaching calculus. This is not rocket science. You can do this, which I wasn't concerned about doing it. It was just that I didn't want to do it. And, I didn't want one more thing to do. I wanted to fluff the pillows in the nursery. And so I went and did it because I knew that, so we obviously we joke about that now, but we talked about it, and it did make sense for me to be licensed and him not to be. That way we could really work as a team. And so I went and got it. And I passed the tests and did everything. And so that's really where I started, was by him kind of pushing me off the edge and saying, go get this. So I was kind of like, okay, a quick learner, so I learned, you obviously don't know the ins and outs when you first get your license, but I picked up a lot, learned a lot there. And obviously, Ken and I talk about this stuff all the time. So by osmosis, I've learned a ton of stuff. He's the richest educator that I could ever have, because he shares his deals with me, and then I probe and ask questions and really get down to the nitty gritty and try to understand things. So that's when it all started, was in 07, and so obviously my start was a little bit slower because I was a new mom. And so I wasn't out drumming up deals. I was more of a support staff kind of a person at first.
Yeah.
And then really was able to slowly grow that passion. And, honestly, it's kind of funny because it's in June, my teaching license expires. And I was recently, Ken and I were talking about it, and I thought, I need to get that renewed, because a friend of mine that I had taught with had always said, just always be able to have something to fall back on. And I, as women, just if something happens, you just never know. And so I have always really taken her wisdom. She was just kind of a sage. And so I thought, I've got to get this done. Well, it's 100 hours of these CE credits, and it's different credits. I mean, it's work, it's like a college course type stuff. And I only had 2 months to do it. And I thought, well, I can do it. We're in this quarantine time. And something wasn't really sitting right. And one morning I was having my devotional and I was really working, and it was like God released me from doing that. Like, really showed me through this scripture that, I can use those skills and talents that I had then and apply them to where He has me now. And none of that time's wasted, and none of that experience is wasted. And I worked so hard. I mean, I was in school full time. I was teaching full time. I got my master's. So part of me didn't want to waste that.
And I just want to jump on what you're saying, because a lot of women have the same struggle, right? Letting it go of that career that, the parents wanted.
Right.
They put a lot of money into it, and letting that go will disappoint them, and also the person also will be disappointed. And I think that it's a big struggle. And we always talk over here about your skill sets that can be transferable. Letting that go, right? Letting that go does not mean that you're letting all the skills that you gain go with it. So, for example, you're teaching, you're educating. That's all you're doing now, with everybody, right? If you're a realtor, isn't it? So what were the skills that you were using it right now, even if you let that go, that career path go?
Well, as a teacher, I honestly believe that teachers are some of the most adaptable creatures, because, you were controlling a classroom of anywhere from 20 to 30 students with lots of different personalities. I was teaching high school. So, I had big personalities and grown up. Well, they weren't really grown up, but, they were grown children. And, you're also dealing with their parents and the expectations their parents have on them, the expectations the parents have on yourself. So just not only the communication skills, but the people skills that you really gain, and you really begin to understand how some people think, how some people's home life really influences their decision making. Those kind of things were important. The obvious stuff, the organizational skills, the really being able to communicate how something works in 14 different ways to people, that's really an important skill as an agent, even as a designer, helping people with their homes. Everyone kind of sees things differently, and everyone wants to have a different level of input and control. And so you kind of have to read that. And that's kind of the name of the game, entering into these transactions with different environments. So a lot of those skill sets, clearly my math skills. I can understand the numbers, and that's very important too. And having that reason and logic. Yeah. But I also have this very creative side. I'm kind of an odd creature in that way. And so, I can provide that balance for Ken when we're both making a big decision on what we're going to choose to engage in. I can just offer a different perspective.
I really wanted to circle back when Ken, said to you, you really need to get your license. And you're like, hold on, I'm thinking one thing, you're thinking something different. And
Right.
you went out on faith and you did it. And
Yep.
you probably look back on that saying, oh my gosh, this is a whole new career for me now, and look what you built, right? 500 flips. You've built a,
Right.
A mega business and so big and so successful that you're featured on TV, right? And that's huge,
Right.
huge probably opportunities for you both. So I'm curious to get into, how, like you went out on faith with that, obviously a little bit
Right.
of faith at that moment. And I'm sure there's been moments that's been maybe a recipe for the success you've had. I mean, I always say, I love talking about working with your spouse and investing with them, but then going on TV is a whole other level, right?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
wow. And then 3 kids. And it's just like, I feel like you can speak to this in a way that and a lot of women can't, and a lot of spouses can't. So I'm curious to get into a little bit of that. And what has been the recipe to not only work with your spouse, to trust your spouse, to navigate all that, and then to take that pivot on, okay, we're going to take our private life and put it on public TV, and just kind of curious to get into that, because there's probably some real key lessons that all of us that are navigating working with spouses
Sure.
and, investing with them can take from.
It's really, it's tricky, and we just celebrated our 20-year anniversary. So,
Congrats.
we kind of reflected,
Congrats.
thank you, on that. And we kind of laughed because we got married at 23. So we were very young, and we kind of grew up together. So it was probably better that in the first 7 years of our marriage, we didn't kind of take these leaps quite yet, because we were still growing up. I mean, we were kids, and that's when you're working with your spouse, it is, I mean, that's big girl business, I mean, that's like, it's not messing around. And so you kind of really have to have a different level of maturity and trust in one another. So, but we were 30 probably at the time when we, when we started and I went and got my license. So it was faith. I have always believed in Ken, and he's a risk taker. I mean, that's for sure, but he's also cautious. And so my bottom line was, if we can take this risk, but I always know that ultimately we'll be taken care of. My line to my friends was, we're not going to live in a cardboard box. So, and I'd grown up with, I didn't grow up with unrealistic expectations of life. And so Ken says, this is jumping a little bit backwards in our story, but I used to drive this 1980 brown Toyota Celica. My dad was a mechanic. And so, you kind of get the leftovers. And so he said in college, he knew that I was the kind of girl he wanted to marry, because I didn't have to have, a brand new BMW to be happy. But I was very content with what I had. And so that transpired later with these deals and with this faith and jumping into, for him, a different career, for me, a different career, kind of leaving a career that I loved, really. And so there was an underlying trust that was always there, that I knew we'd be fine. So if we had to eat frozen dinners for a year, I could do that. But at the end of the day, I knew that we would always have a roof over our head, and maybe we couldn't do as much shopping or whatever as we wanted, but our needs ultimately would be cared for. And that was really where it started for me.
I love what you're saying too, because it's a foundational piece, right? It's like, for us too, it's like, we talked a lot about where we wanted to be and where we saw our lives. And, those are real conversations. Those are big conversations. That's not just like, what's your favorite Netflix show right now? Right. I mean, we talk about that too, but, cause that's something that's helpful to just, get away from all this craziness of quarantine. But regardless, you have to have those big conversations. And then with that, it's like, how does the business and the investing align with your bigger vision and your values versus the other way around? I think people just talk about the wrong things, and couples do, and then they end up going down a path that one doesn't trust the other with money, and you get into all that, right? And it's so much stuff around it. And it's, if you started with the bigger stuff, like, the core stuff, the faith and the trust and the foundation, and let's build there. And then we can go build upon that. It's very different than starting the other way around.
Right. And I've always heard, I wish I could remember the book, but there's a marriage book that, and one of the top things that it encourages spouses to truly work on is believing the best in them first. And, so often it's easy to react to, honey, this investment we just made went south or whatever. And so we react and we start blaming, or we, accuse. And then at that moment you've separated from the, you can't hear what they're saying. Where, now it's like, I really try to put that into practice where it's something that might upset, if it upset me or if I disagree. Really, it's typically, I have a few opinions in life. So, but it's rather than making my opinions the issue is, I believe the best in Ken. His intentions were not for something to go south. And so that's my foundation point. I always start there. I'm going to believe the best in him if something, was a disagreement first, and then and then take it from there and really, really dissect it.
Love that. I love that. Yeah.
Anita, I have a question for you because, obviously you guys are both on the same page. On our Facebook community, we have ladies that are struggling with the following question. Usually they say, listen, I am really passionate about real estate, but my husband or partner is not. So what should I do to convince him or her to join me? Or if I just should let go of it and just go on my own? So what's your take on it?
That's really hard. And it's a real thing because you're dealing with lots of different personalities. I think you have to respect the spouse. You can still respect the spouse or partner that might be afraid to take that dive and still participate in it. And it's a matter of, really being on the same page and saying, all right, would you be comfortable joining me in this small way? Let's go on this, and take it step by step. Or maybe if it's a financial investment because typically, you're buying, it's okay. What if I take $80,000 from this bank account or this whatever, and this is what I've got to play with. And then if you'll just support me in this, let me do it. So I think breaking it down that way, it can be really divisive if you're not careful. And I 100% understand that. There are a lot of things I look back on that I think I probably should have been worried about that. And I think maybe I didn't even understand exactly what risk he was taking. But at the end of the day, even in my naivety, I was still able to go, we'll be okay. We'll be okay. The worst thing, that happens is, the worst thing that would really have happened is, okay, we might need to move if we have to sell our house. But at the end of the day, we would survive that. And there's a huge lesson there. And so what you gain from some of those mistakes is almost worth more than the investment that you're making, or the return on that investment whether you get it or not.
I think what you're saying is really, really powerful. And I want the women listening to this to hear it, because I'm being reminded of it. I love your approach in saying, and you had this approach when you started, not just because of the success you've had in the business you've built, because clearly you've had this way of being for forever, as long as you've been saying it as you got into this. You haven't been attached. And the attachment to the money, to the deal, to the outcome gets really in our way as people, as women. And it could cause just huge divides in partnerships. And whenever I feel really close to something and I feel very attached to it, I know it's my time to okay, I got to release this. I got to it's going to be fine. We're going to work it out. Think about this pandemic that we're going through.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
It's like the ultimate, not trying to get attached to the outcome. Like no one knows where this is going to actually end up. But what you can do is in terms of faith and just being mindful of what you're too attached to. I find that when you get, at least when my husband and I are like kind of at crossroads and I'm not being supportive or he's not being supportive or something in our business, I'm like, oh, I'm too attached. Absolutely. That's usually what comes up for me. And then I have to step away a little bit and go, okay, it's all going to be fine. We lose that money, we lose it. We'll be fine. We'll work it out.
Right.
I have to remind myself of that. So
and
I don't know if there's any women listening.
You can gain from that. And
yeah,
in the loss, there's still a gain.
Absolutely.
In every loss, there's still a gain. And that is really an important perspective that I've learned. And it hurts. It doesn't make the loss any better.
Right. But I think that the mindset is what will differentiate one from, another. From that perspective, right? That you have trained your mindset. What have you done in order to grow, not just your business, but your mindset, so you can take that loss and really look from that perspective that, okay, those are the important lessons that I gained from it. Still sucks, but I got some lessons and I'm taking this to grow my business. Do you have any tips or things that you both have done that worked for you guys to grow your mindset?
For me, my faith is very important. And so what I have learned, and it's taken, it's still, we learn, and this is honestly what I teach my daughter and her friends. They come to the house for some Bible studies and stuff, but where is our identity? Mm-hmm. And so for me, my mindset is about my identity. My identity is not in whether or not the deal is successful. My identity is not in whether or not our show is renewed or not renewed, or, who I am doesn't change based on these circumstances. And so that having that level of contentment with who I am and what I'm learning, because really and truly, like the hardships that come, there is value there. There's so much value there. So it's not a matter of a hardship coming or a failure and, or a broken deal or lost money. It's money at the end of the day. Who I am is not wrapped up in, I made $60,000 on this deal. It's really not. Or, someone didn't like my design for this house and it got, whatever. It's not there. I still put my best foot forward. Okay, what can I learn about this? How did this relationship go? What am I going to do next time differently? And then you have to move on. It's not always easy. It's not. And there's kind of a dead period where you've got to work through that and climb the mountain a little bit, but it's always worth it. It's never not been worth it.
So if I'm a woman listening to this, and I love what you're saying, because it is about where's my identity? What are other questions that they would be asking themselves? So you got women listening to this that, may have grown a portfolio. They're looking at pivoting. They're looking at scaling. They're full-time and they've been home during this quarantine. They're like, I don't want to be an engineer anymore. I want to work for myself and I have flexibility with my kiddos or whatever's coming up. There's a lot of things coming up for women and for people, right? Around the world right now, I think, in a way that no one would have expected. So I'm always a big fan of we get better answers if we ask better questions, right? So you can't just say, you can't ask a question, go, why did that happen? And then expect this empowering, life-changing answer, right? Because it's
usually it's not.
Usually it's not. It's going to be like this sucky answer. And you're like, oh, okay. But it's about the questions we ask. So, identity is a big thing, right? I don't know if we could solve that in a podcast episode, but what are some of those questions that women listening could start to ask themselves so they can maybe start to discover that? Because I don't know if you polled most women, what is your identity? If 9 out of 10 of them would be able to say this, and this, and I'm not attached to this, and this, and this. I don't think most women would be able to answer that, which is sad because we all have it. We just don't know it, So I'm curious to what are some of those kind of probing questions that women can actually ask themselves to get those answers? For
me, the foundation is my faith. And so I look at it as, I am who God says I am. And that doesn't change. And that's really where, that's really the bottom line for me.
I got the chills.
And so
I did.
I tell the girls, it's easier when you think of it in terms of being a little girl. And because for us now, we have so much more responsibility. So put yourself as, you know, you're a little 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old girl, and my daughter played basketball, and a lot of her friends play basketball, or there's really, I mean, for 12-year-old girls, they're amazing athletes. And some of them are amazing musicians, or they just have these really incredible talents. And I kept saying to them, you know, let's talk about identity, because when I asked them, you know, describe yourself or tell me who you are, they'll say, they'll tell me what they can do. I can play basketball, I can, you know, I can sing a song, or I can, whatever it is that they can do. And I said, okay. I said, and you're right. And I've seen all of you girls do this. I mean, they are truly, truly incredible. And I said, but what if you broke your leg and you can't play basketball anymore? I said, does that change who you are? And they said, no. And I said, but then would you act like it did? Yes, you would be upset. Yes, you would have I mean, that would be a lot that you'd have to work through. But what if you could never play basketball again? Does that change ultimately who you are? And that was where I realized I didn't even plan on taking the study that way, but it was when I started asking these girls these questions that's what would come out. And then it was like, oh, okay, they're viewing it backwards. You know, who we are isn't what we can do or what we can't do. That's not who we are. And so that's really where I have learned to put focus. And when I'm feeling like, oh, I'm not this, and you know, as women, we compare ourselves way too much. And that's just, you know, I'm not, my social media isn't which that's a whole other ballgame. I am, someone, Lord, please help me with my social media. I'm just so inconsistent. I don't know. That's a whole other thing. But like, you know, it's like, they've got this many followers and I must not be as successful because guess what? Who I am is not residing in that, or how fast I can grow mine versus how fast someone else can grow theirs. Those are the questions I would ask myself is, who are you? And then if who you are, and when you're writing a list down, if who you are is what you can do, the mark is off. You know, it's not quite lining up.
I love that.
That's big time.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, when you think about it, you go deep, but it's essential, isn't it? It's just a matter of, okay, how can I ask myself those questions? Then the power is back on me. The power of who I am is not if somebody, you know, praise me or do something good or bad, one or another. It doesn't really matter. So the power of how I'm going to feel or define myself is on what I myself, especially I think that nowadays with social media.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people, kids and grown-ups too, always depend on how many likes and followers. And listen, I have been growing our community very organically, and still who we are is not defined by our numbers of the podcast or followers or anything else. We always had a very solid foundation. Why are we doing what we are doing? All, you know, which goes beyond real estate. So moving forward for you and Ken, what's next for you guys? You guys clearly very successful. What are you guys focusing on right now?
So we are focusing on growing our brokerage. We've got a real estate brokerage. And so we're working on that. We've got a mortgage company within that brokerage that we're also working on. So new construction, right now the market it's not slush with houses that are wise to flip in Atlanta quite yet. So I'm sure that will return, and then, you know, we'll do that we'll continue to do that as well. But that, and, you know, I've been working on growing very slowly, but growing a design business because of the show, many people saw, you know, the designs and things that, you know, I was able to create. And so while I've always done that in-house, I can now do that for clients and have my own client base, which is really fun because it's all very relational, and, you know, you really get to know a person before you start helping them make selections for things, because you got to know what they like. So that's always fun.
Oh, that's awesome. And it's, and not everyone's good at it, you know, especially in the investing side. A lot of investors, you know, they flip houses and they're just vanilla boxes and there's no soul in them. You know, and I know we didn't get a chance to get into it, and it might be a heavy question, but it's popping in my head right now. How do you, in a simple way, how do you hug the line of getting some customization in a flip, right? To have some wow factor, have some of that uniqueness, right? So you're not just this vanilla box, and not go over budget and not make it a crazy, you know, amount of money in terms of budgeting. I've flipped. I have not flipped anywhere near what you and Ken have done. We flipped property. Our Justice flipped lots of properties as well. And it's just always an interesting question mark in my head still of, you know, how do you balance those two? So how have you guys figured out how to balance them?
That's the name of the game. And that is, I think that's where, like we were talking earlier about skill sets, that's where like some of my skill sets all come in. And it's like this game of, all right, I've got X amount of dollars, and how can I maximize that? And then, you know, so the science and the art get to come together for me. And that's where that's where like the magic happens. So and sometimes it's, you know, hey, Ken, I think we need to spend $5,000 here more, because in the end, that's a 20 grand payoff. And so it's knowing which neighbor. Now, sometimes it doesn't work. You know, sometimes I was wrong, but gosh, I don't know what the secret sauce is necessarily, because it's a case by case basis. Yeah. And you have to know the neighborhood, and if the neighborhood is going to support a higher price point. But I think too, not being afraid to do something a little bit different than what's being done in that neighborhood is always worthwhile. And you can always do it in places that can be changed. A front door, for example. If a buyer comes in and hates your yellow front door, well, guess what? It's a can of paint, or, you know, it's $200 to buy a new door and stain it, or whatever. You know, you choose the places that are changeable in a flip. You know, it's always different. Like flip design versus client design, two totally different ball games.
Sure.
But flip design, is tricky, but there's easy ways to customize a home that give it that wow factor. Like on your exterior, if you're looking at shutters, have custom shutters made. That's not going to break the bank, but it's going to look a lot better than buying the plastic shutters from, you know, your big box store that are 2 inches too short on either side.
Yeah.
They don't look right. You know what I mean? They don't look right because
they don't.
You don't have custom, you know, you're not going to order them custom. So having custom shutters built and painted or stained. And then from doing that, then you end up with a supply. So then you've got, you know, keep all that extra material. Well, Ken would say don't, but I say do, because I keep it. Therein lies a difference of, just because I tend to keep everything. But if you keep that, then next time you go to build shutters, you've got half the material you need for all the small pieces.
That's like that. Good. So for the ladies that are listening, if that design vision, if that's not you, it's okay. But you must have somebody in your team with that eye. You just can't allow that person that you know it's not her strength to pick the backsplash and the countertop,
right? And
put two busy things that are gonna collide, right. And in the middle do two different colors of cabinets and get chrome faucets that does not match with the other ones that you picked. and it's Wild West, right?
Yeah.
But that is not like it's a design issue, not like a more a cost issue, because it's just a choice. So I think that it's all about knowing your strengths and finding the team. So talking about team right now, what is your team looks like right now, and how did you select the people to work with you guys?
So, on the design side, it's just me right now. And when we had the show, I had a design assistant just because, I needed hands in the field when I was filming. But, we've got we've got different areas of our business. So our team for like our rehabs or renovations consists of a construction manager and a project manager. And we also have someone in-house who is searching properties and, taking intake calls and things like that. Obviously we have an office manager, and then there's, like, I consider myself kind of a rogue agent doing all the things, right? And Ken is certainly doing all the things and helping manage those things. So that's the core of our team. And obviously that expands in terms of some of our crews and people that we, use, our trades that we use to work with.
Yeah. And it's probably ever changing, right? Depending on what business is accelerating, what business is kind of quiet, and you have to adapt to it. Yeah.
It is.
Anita, this has been amazing. We could talk to you all day, seriously. And I've like 10, I sincerely mean that. I'm like, got like more follow-up questions, so I'll have to have you back on.
Okay, that's fun. I can talk, listen. As long as I've got a cup of coffee, I'm happy.
You're good. Where can the ladies listening learn more about you and all the wonderful work you guys are up to?
Well, I've got Instagram, just at Anita Corsini. That's the best way, or at redbarnhomes.com. I do have a blog there that maybe these ladies can push me to add some more content that I'm telling you, this is not my strength.
All right.
I'm too distracted for it. But I do at redbarnhomes.com. I've got a blog there. Instagram. I've got Twitter, but Instagram's the best place to catch me.
Awesome. And all of this information you guys can find on our show notes. Now we're going to transition to our fabulous 3 questions. And the first one, Anita, is, so what's the most transformational book you have ever read?
I don't know if it was the most transformational that I've ever read, but I just recently finished The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown, and that one was really good. It was really good, very straightforward, and an easy read. And so that's a pretty challenging one, I think, for this audience to really dig deep.
Awesome. The second question is, what's the most powerful routine that you do to create a financially free and balanced life, whatever balance means to you?
I exercise. I take these classes at my gym, and that is truly my balance. I have buddies there. It's an incredible environment, and it's what I miss most, honestly, during this quarantine. So I always make time and effort to get there and do that because one, I enjoy it, and it puts the gas in my tank that I need.
Awesome. And the last question is, which woman, famous or not, has inspired you the most?
My mom is someone who's inspired me. She is such a hard worker. And then she's just got like a little fire in her. So watching her keep going, keeps me going. But also the women, the mothers of my students when I was teaching, there's a handful of them who truly, they lived a lot of hard things. And some of them, I watched them walk through that. And they really inspired me to do it well, to go through the hard things well. And many of them now I still am in touch with and, go to for advice on a regular basis.
That's wonderful. Anita, thank you so much for being on our show and sharing your amazing insights with our women that are listening and are part of our community. So thank you. Sincerely.
You're welcome. It was great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to receive updates on our next interviews, Go to our website, therealestateinvestor.com. There, you can subscribe to our show, become part of our investor community, and get updates on upcoming episodes.
If you like our show, please share it with other women who would benefit. And don't forget to leave us a rating on iTunes. We'd really appreciate it. And as always, we encourage you to take one action as a result of today's show and put it into motion so you can live both a financially free and balanced life. Thanks for spending time with us.
Ciao.